Welcome to Economics Happy Hour. Brief introduction before we get to our main episode. This was recorded at 16 Lots Brewery in Newport, Kentucky. So there's a little bit more background noise than usual, but we thought it was a little bit of a special event. We hope you like it. Let's get to the episode.
Welcome to Economics Happy Hour. My name's Matt.
And I'm Jadrian.
And we are at 16 Lots Brewery. If you watched or listened to our previous episode 2 weeks ago, you might remember this place. It is not 2 weeks later. We're just recording a couple of them.
Just about 2 minutes later.
It's about 2 minutes later. But we are thrilled to have Christopher Clarke with us.
Hello.
And we're going to continue this little experiment of recording live in person and also bringing on some guests. At first, Jadrian, what are you drinking?
I have a follow-up to the beer that I had podcast-wise 2 weeks ago. Recording-wise 20 minutes ago. It is a raspberry Berliner Weisse, so it's the same sour with raspberries added to it.
Yep. And last time I believe I had the Soak City. This time it's the Cincy Hammer. And for those who worried about alcohol consumption, these are 5-ounce pours. So 5 ounces in 45 minutes is being
safe.
Pretty responsible drinking for those who
are concerned about our consumption.
Yeah, for those who might be concerned.
And well, I have a root beer, so no concerns
fantastic,
there. Yeah.
Fantastic.
There's some sugar concerns.
There's some sugar concerns, yeah.
Future Chris will look back on this day and say, that was the turning point.
That's when they should have instituted the sugar tax.
He had 2 sodas in 1 weekend.
Well, I'll do a short bio. So Dr. Christopher Clarke is an assistant professor of economics, and then it says in parentheses, career track at Washington State University. Studies public policy and income inequality, loves connecting to students and encouraging their futures using powerful economic tools in a wide diversity of applications. Began teaching in 2013, covering introductory to master's levels. Won the Media and Moving Images Teaching Prize from the University of Houston. And I guess I got to know your work a lot through TikTok videos, which I'm not actually on TikTok. I now have a TikTok.
Okay. Oh, yeah. You started doing them.
You downloaded the app, huh?
Well, Charlotte started doing them.
Okay.
I literally don't even know how to get on and find them, but like the videos are making their way on there, and Charlotte had to respond to the comments and say,
I'll have to follow you on there.
Yeah.
Well, you'll follow his assistant.
You'll follow Econtastic. It's just taking the same stuff from YouTube that are shorts. That's all it's doing. It's not extra, but but really great videos on TikTok. So could give a follow there. And we're interested, I guess, on a couple general questions that we want to address on this. One we'll save is, what's your favorite topic to teach? That's one that we definitely want to get to. But
okay.
I guess I'm kind of curious, what got you into making videos and kind of doing the TikTok outreach, and how did this all start?
Well, it starts with a hole. You see, there's a hole in society. I think I'm at a public university. Part of my salary is subsidized by the American taxpayer. So I feel there's a duty not just to teach the students who are paying tuition, but to reach out to the broader public and the broader community. I mean, the economy and economic tools are things that affect everybody. These are things that quality democratic engagement in policy makes tremendous difference on our material quality of life. So that's the impetus. Why video? There's a hole, both on YouTube and more recently on TikTok, since it's such a new platform. I mean, on the platform of TikTok, there are 4 to 5 PhD economists who make content on there.
Were or now?
Now.
Now. Okay, I know, right, because I know Wolfers is on there now.
Well, sure.
Econtastic is on there now.
Econtastic's on it now.
So
yes.
You got to up it to 6.
I have to up it to it's in that ballpark.
Okay.
But those who are making content every day, or at least like 4 videos a week, there's really only 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So there's just a huge gap. And it's not because people aren't talking about it. Everybody cares about the economy, and people put their opinions out there all the time. You know, they say Wall Street is coming in and buying all the houses, and that's why we can't afford it. And then you go in the numbers, and you don't see that. And you find that, no, we just stopped constructing houses. Yeah. And the biggest bad guy would be your local...
Can I pause you for a second?
I'm going off.
There's a baby crying in the background, and I think it was because...
It's picking it up?
No, I just think if it is, it's fine, but I think it's because the baby was upset when they were hearing the false economic report that Wall Street was buying it would make anybody want to cry. So
Yeah, so if we want to fix the world's problems, we have to accurately describe them, and then we have to find policy that actually addresses it.
So I'm going to ask you a weird follow-up. Tell us what your first video was. I assume you know the topic of your first TikTok.
Yeah.
Okay.
I said, what's the stock market?
Okay.
I started making it right when Wall Street Bets was doing their whole thing with the Reddit channel and all of these social media collective trying to create these bubbles. So I had to explain within the first 10 videos. I'm explaining what a short was. Of course, I'm an economist, not a financier, so I had to teach myself what a short was as well. And I got like 200 views after the first one,
So this leads my follow-up question. Which video would you pick as your first viral one? So, right, like I know...
Well, there's different levels.
Yeah,
right?
so
you start off,
which one would you count as like the first moment where you go, oh, that one's viral? But then like later, right, it's more.
Yeah, I'll give you two. So you start off and I'm getting like 100 to 300 each. And it's very exciting because I'm getting new followers every day. I told my students, and one of my students was follower number 36, I remember. So that's when I was ready, like, okay, I'm getting comments, I'm getting feedback. It's not just junk I'm creating. But I created a video on natural monopolies and why sometimes we want a monopoly and, sewage and things like that. And that one got 4,000, which was the most I got, and that was extremely exciting. And then a month later, I made one quoting Jeremy Bentham and marginal utility, diminishing returns, and why we should eat dessert first.
Okay.
And I featured a beautiful chocolate cake canvassed by Box, Air, and G. I mean, it was a beautiful video, and I got 100,000 views.
Okay.
So that's when I decided, okay, I can do this.
Okay. That's really cool. And there's a different scale. I just am redoing some of the YouTube shorts that are going on TikTok. But
Okay.
that is a different level of what you see on YouTube. Well, some people see it. I don't see it.
Famous people do well on YouTube Shorts, but I found it really hard for you to enter into that. You already have to have an established market on a regular YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Are there videos that you make that are very popular on like Reels, on Instagram, but like aren't so relative,
Yeah.
right? So like
Yeah.
like TikTok is gonna have the most views, but like one that had like an Instagram spike but didn't seem that popular on TikTok, or like a YouTube one or a Twitter one that much more popular relative to its same platform.
Sometimes on Twitter, because there's such an active econ community, if I feature a paper and the author is generous enough to reshare it, and they're a well-established economist, that can go more viral there.
Okay.
Particularly if it's a bit more technical and my presentation, it's not going viral on the TikTok platform. However, by and large, I have a larger audience on TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. And it's an awesome mission, right? And I think I started about a year ago. I started doing videos more on YouTube, and I'm looking back like I knew nothing at all, nothing. And like you could go through the timeline of looking at the thumbnails to realize when I started to figure out, thumbnails might matter, and then
Thumbnails
the
are
progression
everything
of
on
them.
YouTube, yeah.
And then, but like one thing that I like learning a little bit recently with Instagram Reels, and then a whole lot more about 2 minutes ago when you were explaining is. I really do need to prioritize getting the stuff on TikTok because it seems like it reaches a larger audience.
You can, yeah. Now, I feel today, and of course this is just an impression, it's harder to get in than when I first started. I think there's just a lot more creators on there. It's far less often for videos to go viral. And there's some macro data that showed that too, that the quantity of videos that get 10 million views is less than it used to be. So, who knows what TikTok is doing. But
well, if I'm not going to get 10 million with one video, then I'm out.
That was the point.
So the fun part about this is we get to record this and then just wait, and Chris has to just wait for the day that this drops. And I'm going to feel the same way. You don't know this. I actually yelled at you this morning in the hotel. Your hotel room is near mine, so I got to hear you making your TikTok.
You did.
As Brian O'Rourke and I were walking by, and I could hear your voice from the hotel. And I go, he's making a TikTok right now.
You heard me do like 5
versions
because I couldn't get the line right. Yeah.
So now I feel really excited because like I get to wait, and that TikTok is going to drop one day. I'm going to be like,
it's out this morning.
Oh, I didn't listen.
It's already out.
Well, then I got to wait for you to put it on Twitter because I'm not on TikTok. So
yeah.
I'm going to see it and go, I walked by when he was making that video.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. So you're teaching. You obviously are very passionate about it. So this might be a tough one for you.
Okay.
But What is your favorite subject to teach within economics?
So my area of expertise is public policy. It's what I specialized in, and so anything related to that. So at the very end of Principles Macro, we finally get to fiscal policy and just how government functions in general. And we're blessed to live in a democracy where, as imperfect as it is, everybody has at least a vote, every 4 years or every 2 years or whatever in federal policy and more often locally. And so we can influence the direction of public policy. And if a populace is upset about something in between elections, we can still influence policy. Again, despite all of the lack of democratic representation that we would like, we still have that. So when I talk about where do the revenues go? So the revenues come in, and where do the expenditures go? Where does the government spend on? What services do we enjoy? Everyone thinks, oh, we just have a giant military, which is, we do have the largest military in the world, but it's not the largest expenditure by government by a long shot. I mean, state and local governments are half of the government expenditures, and they're not spending very much on military or police, relatively speaking. And then even at the federal level, we're spending more on social services, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Those take up the vast majority of our government. And so when we talk about that, we say things like, should we have more, should we have less government? Which is, of course, you can't really answer that scientifically. We get to know pieces that people want, services that everybody enjoys, and things that the private market, because of market failure, won't provide at adequate levels.
So there was a survey that came out, I think, maybe a month ago, a couple weeks ago. And it was fascinating because it surveyed people that said, are we spending too much money? Is the government spending too much? And like the majority of people said, yes, we need to spend less money.
Yeah.
And then they also had follow-up questions of like, would you like to see more or less money spent in these categories?
Yes.
And the top categories that we should spend more money on were Social Security and Medicare.
Which is our biggest component.
Which is the biggest component.
By far,
and so they talked about how people want to spend less, except the things they want to spend more on are the things we spend most of it on.
What I'm curious if you did a family, but like if you ask people about their family spending, if it'd be the exact same, right? Because I think as a family, a lot of families would be like, oh, I should really probably spend a little bit less and save a little bit more. And then
I would love to spend more on vacations.
But,
I would love to.
Sure.
But when you break it down into, I'm curious. Well, it may not be.
But this is the same. I hear these same sort of surveys of like, okay, well, we want to spend less money. We need to spend less in the government. What should we cut? And then like the top choice is always like foreign aid, which is like the tiniest
little.
And it's like cutting pennies off of thousands of dollars.
And then when I start discussing, okay, should we send tanks to help maintain world peace, or should we send foreign aid to maintain world peace? Which one's better? Everyone's like, oh, foreign aid. Because then, you might be, all of this is very messy, so you might be upholding some corrupt, terrible government, but that's a whole lot cheaper than sending guns and troops. Again, not to say I'm not making a position on foreign policy, but there's these trade-offs. There's very real trade-offs.
So I had to, I interviewed for a job once, and it was a job that was for teaching principles of macroeconomics. And if you have not noticed in this podcast, Matt and I are microeconomists.
I see. Okay.
And I really wanted a new job, so I applied for a macroeconomist position. And I had to do a guest demonstration, and it was on fiscal policies.
Okay.
And I go, oh man, I have got to teach about, I was very thankful that I taught labor, and so I actually recognized almost all of the stories.
There's a lot of overlap between labor.
There's so much in
macro,
terms of like what do we spend on workers that are required versus discretionary and stuff like that.
Yes.
And so I didn't feel so bad in the moment, but those are the moments where like as you see it sort of all laid out, is where you go, man, politically, you have people from all over the place who have very strong opinions.
They do,
about. I don't want to say this. Like, there are people who are very educated, but there are also people who have very strong opinions about things they don't understand. Like the idea that the military is not as we don't operate a military with some social services attached to it.
Right.
That Social Security is a huge component of what we spend money on.
Yeah.
And just like understanding that data is really hard and hard to get across.
And since the 60s, with the decline of the Cold War, percent of GDP spent on the military is a fraction of what it used to be, whereas percent of GDP spent on social services is far larger than it has ever been.
Yeah.
So But then I show that graph, and then I'll ask the students, okay, should we change anything? And of course, some will express the opinion, we need a smaller military, and then some will express the opinion, well, we have to have a safe world. And I mean, as a instructional, as a principles of economics professor, I can't comment on either. Those are largely just differences in values of the students. But yeah, having the data in front of you is step one for any conversation.
So as you say that, I was just about to say, one of the things I struggled with in teaching labor, and I don't know if you've experienced the same thing, it is really hard to wrap your head around millions and billions and trillions.
Absolutely
and,
is.
and like, it's really hard to stand up and say, oh, well, you know, we just cut, it's $50 million. And in their minds, they're like, oh, that is so much money. And I'm like,
but at the federal level, it's nothing.
The federal level, it's nothing. And I have to be like, do you know what the budget of like your university is? Like your university budget is probably in the $1 billion. Like it,
in that range.
Not Susquehanna. Not Susquehanna. Yeah.
But a large state university.
Yeah. So I think when I was at Penn State, I think their yearly budget was $7 billion.
Holy cow!
Well, they had a med school. That's why. The med school is half of it.
Wow.
Which almost sounds similar to your...
WSU just has a med school recently, too.
Well, so Penn State also has 20-something branch campuses, so it's a huge... They're operating really 20 units.
That's the entire statewide
But
operation.
I think even Virginia Tech, I think their budget's a couple billion. I think it's like 2 or 3. But it's that idea when somebody hears like, oh, it's $100 million, I'm like, that's nothing.
It's just a big number.
You're right, it's a big number. Yeah. I'm like, that's nothing to the federal. That's a rounding error at the federal government level. When you talk about trillions.
That's why you always show historical graphs to show what's a normal number, what's not a normal number. You know, because when you teach the unemployment rate's 3.7%, you realize there's like hundreds of thousands, millions of people who are unemployed today. Yeah. Oh, that's awful. Then you realize, well, wait a second. This is the lowest we've ever seen in 50 years. I mean, you contextualize it, what's normal, what's not normal. That's how you always have to present
So
these
I
numbers.
do something similar in the labor part where we have some I've known of macroeconomists who, I don't want to say jokingly, but sort of shrug off the unemployment numbers, right? Where they're just like, oh, it's 4.2 or 4.3, like whatever.
Sure.
And I try to explain to them that, 0.1% doesn't seem like a big deal.
There's a lot of families.
But when you have hundreds of millions of people, that's a lot of people.
It is. It does
Yeah,
matter.
1% would be... 1% is going to be what, 1.5 million? It's in 150 million workers?
And so I would always say, like,
150,000.
Yeah, I go, so you're talking about 150,000 people. Like, that's not an insignificant amount of people that we're talking about.
And that pertains to a lot of the debates around the monetary policy and should we go back to the 2% inflation rate, or should we just take a long time to get there because now we're down to 3%? And the difference could be, you could say, okay, well, we're going to get an unemployment rate of 3.5 to 4.5. 4.5 is still a relatively good unemployment rate, but that's 1 million families without work that we could avoid. And I think that's the key. It's not good enough to be normal. It's only good enough if you have the power to avoid it. So if these are avoidable unemployments, then this is a serious moral question we have to answer.
So do you have more fun teaching principles of macro or principles of micro?
I don't teach principles micro. Oh, I have before, but not now.
Well, we'll say
I have taught intermediate micro.
Okay.
Well, I love them both. I mean, intermediate micro is a blast. I have found not everyone loves teaching it, but that is the cusp. That is the threshold.
You teach intermediate.
I have never taught it. I taught managerial, which is
I love managerial.
one
that's
time.
very close. Yeah, it's very close. Yeah.
But it was on the list. Before I went into this role, I had told Dr. Olu Onafawara, department chair at Susquehanna University in economics, that when he wanted to get rid of that, I wanted that class. I just loved
because it's so much fun. It's what they do every day. It's what they're going to do in their jobs. When you start talking about pricing strategies and first degree, second degree, third degree, and 2-tier pricing strategies, and all these things that they've heard of, and now we have mathematical models to describe it. Of course, relatively simple algebraic models. It's incredibly powerful, and the students' eyes they could just start looking around them, and they started doing cost benefit anytime they're walking anywhere around them. And not that you should always think like an economist, but it's pretty powerful.
You should.
Sometimes it's stressful.
You should always think like an economist.
Well, the one downside is when you're at a menu at a new fast food place, I spend 10 minutes looking at every price point and calculating how many calories am I getting per dollar. So there's calculation costs.
Okay. Maybe you're right. One thing one thing we like to do to close each episode generally.
Well, wait, we didn't actually ask him what his favorite topic to teach was.
No, it was. It was
sort of
public policy.
Okay.
Public policy.
I thought that was a transition
policy.
into the back end of that. Okay, never mind. I want to make sure we got that one too.
We got. So we talk pop culture references in economics, and I know you know a ton. We're happy to go first if you want a moment to think of one. But
you go first.
I don't know that I'm going to have a public policy one, so I might do a timely one.
Okay.
When this one drops, this episode, the NFL season is right around the corner, and I'm teaching game theory again, so I was just redoing a lesson that will be on YouTube on an NFL survivor pool problem. And I don't know that it's even as much. There's a little bit of backward induction, I think, in NFL survivor pools. So, and a survivor pool in the NFL, it is a contest where each week you have to pick a winner, and you may not. And if you pick a winner, you survive. If you pick the Steelers are playing the 49ers, so if you pick the Steelers and the Niners win, you're out.
Yeah. My understanding of this is you only get to pick that team once, though, right? Like
that is exactly
so if you
right.
Pick Pittsburgh to win, you can't, like in week 12, pick Pittsburgh
Correct.
again.
So
you lose. Okay.
There's a fair amount. I mean, within game theory on sequential games, there's what it's called backward induction, and really it's beginning at the end and trying to work forward. And I'm not serious enough to go to week 17 to try to do that, but I do try to go about 4 or 5, 6 weeks out to think through, what might the next ones be. So the top teams, like the Chiefs and the Eagles going into the year, they just went to the Super Bowl. They're probably going to win week 1, but it may not be the right time to pick them based on what they're doing later. So there's an interesting problem my friend was in, and I use it to actually illustrate probabilities to start off game theory. He was in the playoffs. It was the 2014 playoffs. He made it all the way through. 2 people made the playoffs out of 1,000 people.
Oh.
And so he had this interesting decision. So we'll put a link in the description for that. But survivor pools use a fair amount of backward induction for those who are NFL fans with the season.
So do you ever model it out, algebraically out or anything? Just in your head?
No, I mean, I'll put a little Excel sheet and I'll try to think through, okay, here's 2 or 3 matchups that might be good, or every now and then it's targeting, okay, often what's really valuable is a team that might be, say, the 8th best team. When are they playing the 2nd worst team?
Yeah.
And can you say, is that a week where there's no other good options, and you try to figure out saving them? So I'm sure there are people who take it. I mean, I'll put in $20 on one. This is pretty cheap entertainment, but if you're taking this really seriously, and I know some professional gamblers, right?
Right, yeah.
I would say you're semi-professional gambler.
Semi-professional gambler, I would say, yeah. But on this one, the survivor pool is, I'm not looking to make a living on the survivor pool. So.
I was sitting here trying to see if I could come up with a public policy-related pop culture clip. And I don't think I can't. I don't have my laptop in front. You got one. Okay.
I got one. So this year, one of the best television series was The Last of Us, of course, based off the excellent video game. And that video game, as an economist, is particular to me. As I was studying for the core exams, first year PhD, in that month that you have after semester ends and before the core exam, we would study together as a group for 40, 50 hours a week, and then at night I went over to my friend's house and we played The Last of Us.
I knew you were cool. I love that game.
And so the film game, the TV show came out, we watched it, and of course the opening sequence is iconic. It's just classic. You get to see society go from functioning to destroyed in about an 8-minute long sequence with very little camera cuts. And that whole time as an economist, I'm watching that, and all I can think of is the aggregate supply curve shifting to the left. Productivity is going to decline. As an airplane comes and crashes, well, there goes transportation, and that's going to hurt productivity. And then later on in the series, so to recap, when you have a negative supply shock, you're going to have higher prices, higher costs.
I think a lot of people have seen it. But The Last of Us, there's a fungus that affects people and become zombies, essentially.
Right.
So the title of The Last of Us is The Last of the Remaining. Yeah, I did.
Okay, I thought so.
Well,
okay.
There's a lot of economics in it.
I did a couple videos,
Okay.
not really a full series, but
And
and so it's covering like the shattered world that remains of the
Yes.
last surviving human.
It happened in 2 days, right? The fungus just spread and society collapsed in just a matter of hours and days.
Yeah.
Later on in the series, of course, it takes place 5 years after the fact or 20 years after the fact, something like that. The main character's shoes are broken, and he pulls out duct tape to wrap them. And I'm thinking to myself, duct tape 20 years of the fact after manufacturing doesn't exist anymore is extraordinarily like way more costly than shoes. Like as an economist, that scene I couldn't do it because the cost of that duct tape is way more valuable than his shoes.
So it's interesting. I mean, you hear about it in the series that they're getting pharmaceutical. Like there's Atlanta does
There are
pharmaceuticals.
pharmaceutical plants, yes, but I doubt there's duct tape plants.
Yeah.
So
okay,
you would,
that's
I think there
interesting.
is manufacturing happening because I mean the fascist government has helicopters and jeeps and things. So
Yeah.
there is some. They figured out some level of society to have industrialization, but on a limited scale.
Yeah, that's a really good one. That's
Yeah.
a good one. No public policy.
I got no
ones?
public policy. I have I have news clips. This is my problem.
I could share a second. You could share two the next time if you want. I've got a weird
let's see,
second
you
one.
do
I got a
two.
super big public.
Yeah.
It's a public policy, but it's a weird one.
So you do two,
Yeah.
and I'll say I'll double up on the next one.
So this
Oh,
one,
you
I don't
won.
know that this is really a pop culture, but there's a Twitter account
Mm-hmm.
called, you know how there's Make a Wish Foundation?
Okay.
It's like, and I'll get the exact title right, and we can put it in the description, but it's like Make a Stadium Foundation.
Okay.
And it's a mock account, and this is really relevant to public policy.
I
It's
like
a
this.
mock account
I get it.
that is about the billionaire owners of stadiums
Yeah,
asking for
subsidized.
government assistance.
Yes.
And it is so funny. It's just absolutely hilarious. So it's not really pop culture, but
I'm gonna have to add this.
Make a Stadium Foundation.
On Twitter.
Every now
Yeah,
and then
that's
they'll
funny.
post and saying, this billionaire so and so really needs your help for moving the Las Vegas team.
Oh, this is
and-
a small account. They just have
Yeah.
179 followers.
Yeah.
At Make a Stadium.
Got Make a
Gotta
Stadium.
increase that account. They need some traffic.
Yeah.
They need some
So-
views.
It's a fantastic one. So Jadrian, any
yeah.
closing words or?
No, but this Raspberry Berliner Weisse was better, I think, than the last one. So.
Okay. Well, Christopher, do you prefer Christopher or Chris?
I am neutral.
Okay.
Dr. Clarke.
Dr.
Yeah,
Clarke. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you to everybody for tuning in and listening. And until the next time, cheers.